diplomacy during the war, kind of my favorite part. It goes quick because we've talked about a lot of these things, but it's just that. It's like what behind the scenes stuff was going on as World War I was going on. In 1915, neutral Italy, remember, Italy did not start this war neutral. They had come in with the Central Powers, but then they say, hey, wait a second. I thought our alliance said that we would only attack people if they attacked us first, and I don't think going through, this was defensive. And so they withdraw. They actually are then going to be persuaded by the British and the French on the down low to enter the war against the Central Powers. So the British and French are going to promise the Italians some of that land to the very northern part of Italy that they did not get during the Italian independence, and say, if you come in and fight for us against the Central Powers, which were your allies, we will give you that. And it's called the Italia Irredenta there. And so they promised them this. This is a secret treaty. Put that to the side. In fact, even President Wilson is going to be pretty upset that this was behind the scenes after the United States entry. Page 10, letter A. That just means unredeemed Italy, the top northern part they weren't able to get, and some German colonies and Turkish territories. So they're persuaded by this and come in. This, again, is just going to show us some of the problems and why Wilson, when you get down, you see letter D is the 14 points, is really going to push for everybody just to be straight up with who their friends are. Straight up with what's going on, all of those things. And so he's just like, all of this backwards stuff, that kind of got us in trouble. And we'll get to Wilson here in a second. Next thing is the Zimmerman note. This is one of my favorites. You guys got this in U.S. history probably pretty hardcore, so I only get to touch on it for a second. But Arthur Zimmerman, the foreign minister for Germany in Mexico, for Mexico, is going to send a letter. What happens in 1917 when the Germans reinstitute unrestricted submarine warfare? They know we're going to be ticked off. We have made them promise they won't do it. They paid those restorations for the Lusitania. They know that something could go awry to draw us in, but they have to bomb those ships because they're being starved to death with a blockade. And so they send this letter to the Mexican government saying, if the United States should get drawn into the war and you fight on our side, and when we win against the Americans, you can then have back all of the land that they stole in the Mexican-American War. And so like Texas, New Mexico, Arizona will be rightfully yours. Of course, I don't believe that there was any way that the Mexican government was going to comply with this, but before they really even have a chance to send a response, it was intercepted, this actual note or telegram, by the British and decoded. And, of course, we were the first people they come to the door knocking with it. Yeah, they want the United States in this war pretty bad, and it comes to us. So it's not the reason that we joined the war, but we're a little bitter. What do you mean you're going to talk to our neighbor and promise them lands that we rightfully took from them in war? Yes. Yeah. So, Zimmerman note, that's going on there. We also have the Balfour note. If you remember Lawrence of Arabia, who was Matt's favorite movie, right? Soundtrack too? Yeah. Was making all these promises. He represented the British, and he was making these promises of independence for Arabia, for the Middle East. Well, now Zionism is going to creep into Britain, and they're going to start promising another group of people in the Middle East some freedoms and some land. And so the Balfour Note is going to be sent to Arabs and Jews in Palestine, promising them autonomy if they join the Allies. And so the British have made two pretty contradictory promises here. Spoiler alert, both of these promises they will not keep at this point anyway. So we have a lot of problems that are going to go on because of this. Contradictions that they had already promised with the Arabs is going to lead to contradictions later, and we're going to see as a result of World War I, some boundary lines are going to be drawn that put some people who really, really do not like each other in the Middle East together into Iraq. Yay. Yeah, we're really good at drawing boundaries. Like, I feel like we did a really great job in Africa, too. Like, that is our calling. So, end of the war. Here we go. No, did I skip Wilson's? Oh, look, I put him on the end here. Wilson's 14 points. I think I was like, oh, they've had all this in the U.S. I'll go pretty fast. So Wilson's 14 points, January 1918. You do know that Woodrow Wilson was president when we entered the war, I hope. He was a very idealistic man at home and with foreign policy. I mean, he was not only the glass is half full, he was the glass is runneth over kind of guy. I mean, for each to their own. I think that he really saw the world. It was rose-colored glasses the way it should be. And his 14 points will definitely express that. We also at this time start to get all of those things like, this is the war to end all wars. This war will teach us how to never have a war again. And then you have Woodrow Wilson coming in saying that we can have peace without victory. And you're like, oh, yeah, maybe for us entering really late in the war, but for the British and French want some victory. They want some payback. And so we're going to see conflicting ideals as we go into negotiations for the end of World War I. But Woodrow Wilson really believes that to end all wars, treaties must be perfect. They must solve all of the problems that cause this war. And so if you look at the 14 points, you're not expected to remember these. If you were expected to remember them, they would have been on the AP U.S. exam. But I am going to reiterate the problems that he saw with why, and really the problems we're going to see that caused World War II. Again, abolish secret treaties. He's like, we need to know who's who. We need to know what's up. We need to know if we attack this guy. He's got these 5 guys standing behind him. Okay, so get rid of secret treaties. Freedom of the seas. That we all need to be able to sail our happy little ships without worrying about getting blown up. Remove economic barriers or tariffs. Reduction of armament burdens to stop that militarism. Promise of independence or self-determination. He wants to redraw the map of Europe, but redraw it to where people are autonomous or get to decide on their own who rules them. He uses Poland as a perfect example. Since the 1790s, it's been ruled by other people without it really being asked if they want to. And so he's going to say that would solve a lot of problems if we didn't have all of this nationalistic urge going on. Let's just let them decide for themselves. Adjustment of colonial claims in both the interest of the native peoples and the colonizers. Imagine that, ask the natives. German evacuation of Russia, restoration of Belgium, return of Alsace and Lorraine to France, evacuation and restoration of the Balkans, and return of Schleswig to Denmark. So he wants to return to this balance, kind of anything that was kind of taken along the way, go back. Adjustment of Italy's borders along ethnic lines, and autonomy for non-Turkish parts of Turkish. So he has all of that there. He said these are the main reasons war happened. But what you really need to know is the 14th point. You can just write to the side, this is his baby, this is his favorite. He compromises on all the other points, which were pretty important. They were why this war started. He compromises on all of them to try to get his point 14. International organization. Hi. Thank you. I've been caught. International Organization to Supply Collective Security. I must have. International Organization to Supply Collective Security. And so this is for the foreshadowing of the League of Nations. And so he will really give up and compromise on anything else to get this League of Nations that he thinks is going to prevent any other war from happening. Bad part is he hasn't really asked the Senate yet if they think it's a good idea. And we're going to see some problems with that in a little bit. But he really thinks that if we promise that if one nation gangs up on another nation, like Germany going through Belgium, and we all pounce on them, or like Austria attacking Serbia, if we all pounce on them at once, then it prevents war from ever happening again. Do you know why the Senate was upset with that? Who has the power to declare war in the United States? Yeah. And so they, and their, I mean, I guess if you got some power, you want to keep it, feel that then we have to go to war, whether they say we can or not, is one their opposition. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm telling you, like, if we would have joined the League of Nations, it would have been a serious thing. Like, World War II may not.
Yeah, it's in that. Have you guys read that book, If? Like yeah. It was one that made the actual list, or it made the addendum to the list. But I was like, yeah, the League of Nations, if we had actually followed, sometimes you gotta follow the Susie Sunshine into battle, you know? I think it could have worked. But anyway, we have the end of one war, and as we've just spoiled, we will have another. So the Meuse-Argonne offensive in the spring of 1918 will bring to close this war. The Germans actually feel like it's going to bring the close of war to them in a positive fashion. Russia's just backed out because of the Russian Revolution we're going to talk about on Thursday, right? So they can move all their troops back to the west. They're like, yes, it's the Schlieffen plan all over again. We've got this. It didn't work the first time, but we're going to take France. However, Russia, who is just like pretty much throwing people at, like they don't have guns, but just like guys with no guns are charging at people, they go from that to the United States entering the war on the Western Front. And so because the United States enters, not to be egocentric, but we are able to stop the German offensive. It is our entry right here as Russia leads that the Germans aren't prepared for. We send 3.5 million men in who are still optimistic, who still have that we'll be home by Christmas spirit, who are freshly armed and ready to go, where the troops that have been fighting and entrenched for a long time are not that. And so it really does change. I mean, that's another one of those what ifs. What would have happened if the United States had not entered or entered later or had entered at the beginning and been tired as well? I mean, you just don't know. So the Central Powers are going to seek peace based on these 14 points. Woodrow Wilson actually hires airplanes to fly over Austria and Germany and drop pamphlets of the 14 points, trying to prove like how sincere he's going to be and how fair. And the people at home are starting to have some unrest. They've been fighting this war. It's not the Kaiser and the upper class that are fighting this war. It's the workers and lower class. And they're ready to be done. And so we're going to see that they start to believe they're going to get that fair treatment, and we're going to see that Austria-Hungary is starting to have uprisings at home as well as Germany, and Austria-Hungary will surrender on November 3rd. Germany will agree to an armistice or ceasefire that begins on November 11th. It's actually 11 o'clock on November 11th, on 11th day. My grandfather, in his ultimate humor, actually passed away at 11 o'clock on 11/11 of 2011. It always just makes me laugh. He would totally do that. As a vet. Wilhelm II forced to abdicate and flee to Holland, so we now have the government gone in Germany, and they declare themselves a republic, and we will see how that works out shortly. But this brings us to the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. Let's see what the 14 points that we're in. And we have our big four. You need to know that the big four are Lloyd George of Britain, Clemenceau of France, Wilson of the United States, and Orlando of Italy. I don't know why he even gets to be there. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, a lot of people don't include him here. He's going to stomp off mad, like when he doesn't get what he wants, so they're only there for a short time. And as a side note, there is a German guy that gets to be there, but only to watch. It's like being a non-voting member of a committee. And so, yeah, Orlando doesn't play a big role. They don't get what they were promised, and they stomp off, and we're not staying for the party. So, yeah, it doesn't, a lot of people don't mention them. He has a cool mustache in the picture, so I would kind of leave him there. Plus, it's cool to say he stomped off like a baby. Anyway, and what was your question, Matt? Who you need to know their names? You will probably want to know, especially Clemenceau, because he is going to really want to draw blood from Germany. And we've talked about him before, and he's pretty much running an authoritarian government in France. They're a single power. And of course, Wilson, you'll know. But the Central Powers were excluded from the negotiations since France was concerned with its future security. They want revenge. This whole war's been fought in France. They have lost the most. They want blood. They do not want some 14 points of fairness. And so we're going to see it's going to be hard to balance what Clemenceau and what Wilson wants. But Wilson's hanging on for his 14th point, which unfortunately won't happen anyway. It's so sad when someone's so optimistic gets shut down. But anyway, Italy, like I said, left the conference angry. It would not get some of the territories that had been promised in the Italian Entente of 1915. And that brings us to the Versailles Treaty, or the Treaty of Versailles. In 1919, there were several treaties that ended World War I. If you didn't know that, this is just the main one, which is why you hear about it over and over again. It first of all created mandates, which are like colonies, for the former colonies and territories of the Central Powers. It's going to just draw some different lines there. For the Ottoman and Turk territories, so much of the Middle East will now be controlled by Britain and France. Remember, Britain and France had just promised all of the Middle East that they could rule themselves and they were going to free them. After we win World War I, they say, well, I don't know if you're ready to rule yourself. You've only ever been ruled by Ottoman Turks. We should probably rule over you and tell you what to do for a while until you get this thing down. And then we draw some new lines like Iraq and Transjordan and Syria, and we kind of build some problems for ourselves today. Article 231 of the Versailles Treaty is going to place sole blame on the war for Germany. You'll notice I haven't mentioned Austria for quite some time. It really goes back to that blank check thing, guys. They allowed this to happen. They put a blank check on this war. Germany will be forced to pay huge reparations to Britain and France. I think 132 billion marks in that time, which is going to cause some serious problems. The Rhineland was demilitarized, so that's that space there. France is like, we need a buffer zone from Germany. Also, the Saar coal mines will be taken over by France because they're one of the wealthiest parts in Germany there, so that's going to give them some money back from the war. They won't be able to have a draft. They won't be able to have tanks. They won't be able to have U-boats. They won't be able to have a standing army. They want to make sure that Germany stays weak, and it will lose all of its colonies. Yeah. So, yeah, I think Clemenceau really won out there against Wilson because none of that is what Wilson was really seeking. If you were looking to set things right before World War I, this is taking us back a step further. So, yeah. So you can, yeah, in your most industrial area, yeah. The League of Nations is created. Germany and Russia are not asked or included. The U.S. Senate, however, even after Wilson gave up so many things in this agreement for the League of Nations, will refuse to allow the United States to enter because an American president doesn't have the right to sign a treaty or declare war. The Senate kind of blocks all of this, keeps it all down. Okay, so the League was thus born. You might want to circle C here. I have seen some FRQ questions about comparing the COV, the Congress of Vienna, to the Treaty of Versailles, and which one accomplished more. I would always go Congress of Vienna because it lasted for so much longer, but it also lasted by repressing things that really get out of control here. I think if the League of Nations had been successful, as we were talking about earlier, it would have been a whole different story with World War II. So the League was thus born as a mere shadow of what it originally intended to be. So impact of World War I on European society. I'm going to go pretty quickly through here because I think I did a okay job of getting them in each part. Main thing, we talked about all along the way. Massive casualties. We have 10 million soldiers dead in World War I. 10 million civilians dead. Total war. Okay, we covered those numbers in those parts too. We had an influenza epidemic of 1918. Some people would estimate that we lost more people to a cough than we did to a gun. It was horrible. It took a lot of lives. We have 15 million dead in the Russian Revolution alone. And so we just have a ton of loss of life. This means that the birth rate's going to fall significantly because we've lost a whole generation of men. And I mean, I guess, I don't know the statistics on this, but men can only get around to so many women at one time to have babies here. Illegitimate births will increase. What?
I just found this on Twitter. I followed this German guy.
Uh-huh.
And he just posted a picture of it. It's a sign that says the Reichstag.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice. Perfect timing. War promoted, like we talked about, it blurs those lines of rich and poor because in wartime things were cut back for everyone. We saw women receive the right to vote in Britain that same year that war ended as sympathy for infertility and going to the factories. Germany soon followed. You know that there's dissent. We're getting ready to spend a lot of time with dissent like the Russian Revolution, so I'll skip over 3. Those that lost the most, it goes Russia, to the Russian Revolution and war, then Germany, then Austria, then France, and then the United States is like towards the very bottom. We lost less people than some nations lost in one battle because we entered so late. So we lost the least amount. We will also see the end of everything we've talked about since day one in this class. I know we're getting to the end of content here when we kill everything we started with. The Habsburg dynasty is gone. It's lasted 500 years. The Romanov dynasty is removed in Russia. It's lasted 300 years. The Hohenzollern dynasty removed in Germany had lasted. Omar, wasn't that your guys' group? Yeah. Had lasted 300 years. Ottoman Empire destroyed. Lasted 500 years. So yeah, everything that we built all along the way is now. We'll build some new stuff for this last 3 weeks. Political map of Europe was redrawn. We saw the creation of Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Yugoslavia. Albania regained sovereignty. Germany, you'll need to know Circle B here was split into two. Hitler's really going to hammer home on this when he's trying to get support in World War II by a Polish corridor. East Prussia separated from the rest of Germany. He's really going to hit home how unfair this is and use that. Let's see. The Russian Revolution that we're going to talk about on Thursday is going to result in the world's first communist country. That's an effect of World War I. German nationalist resentment of the Versailles Treaty and its harsh treatment of Germans is going to totally keep alive and re-spark and go into World War II. Unresolved political and economic differences will lead to World War II. If you've read any Keynes, the economic consequence of peace, he very eloquently foretold that the harsh terms of the treaty would hurt Germany's economy, just as the ladies were talking about, and thus the economy of the rest of Europe, and lead to significant future political unrest. And when World War II happens, like his book was not popular in the time, and when World War II happens, people go back and go, dang, that guy was right. And it becomes a pretty popular economic book. Has anybody in econ had to read? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hitler in 1993 will prove Keynes right. I mean, I don't know if that's the way you want to be proved right and get your notoriety, but hey. Faust at this time also was known for saying this is not a peace, it is an armistice for 20 years, so that's a pretty amazing prediction as well. So we saw a lot of people who were like, hey guys, you don't have your stuff together, but, history has a way of repeating itself. So that is it. World War I. We have finished in a very timely manner. Upcoming, Russian Revolution, yay. On Thursday, Age of Anxiety over Spring Break. I'll sum up all the democratic policies of the 1900s. Right after Spring Break is a review. You will get your Spring Break assignments on Thursday. It should be one video, Unit 9.4. You will have your study materials for the cumulative exam and a practice test to take and all kinds of online resources to study. And like I said, we will not come back as the first day and take it. You'll still have some time to ask me questions and do all of those things. You'll have get your FRQs on Thursday that you can revise, and they'll be due right after spring break. And then we'll get our movie. John will be here from Ragtag to see us and get us started. He'll want to show you some films and stuff, show you some avant-garde kind of things you can do. And he's a great resource. So any questions before I cut the recording? That went even faster than I thought.